Could you tell us about your home life?
Well, there were father, mother, 2 daughters, and from 1934 on, more or less, we were a hotel. We lived in a very big home, and people started escaping from Germany when they saw what the Nazis were doing. And so we were never alone with our parents. It wasn't really a normal family life, even though we as children didn't know this.
Was it a religious home?
No, I grew up, well, it was a traditional home in some ways. I grew up in the liberal Jewish movement. My parents were not Orthodox. My mother was raised Orthodox, but when she got married, was quite happy to chuck it.
Did you observe any of the holidays?
Oh, all of them, but in the liberal movement.
So
I mean, I went to synagogue regularly with especially Friday nights, sometimes Saturday morning.
And Passover was observed?
Yes, sometimes at our home, sometimes at other people's home.
Growing up, did you ever experience any prejudice?
No, I didn't. Holland was a very liberal country. If it existed, and it probably did, I wasn't aware of it.
Could you tell us about how your life began to change, say when the war started?
Well, the war broke out in Holland in May 1940. And the first year was more or less normal, and then different kind of laws came down. Jews weren't allowed to do this, they weren't allowed to do that. We had to be in at, I think, 8 o'clock at night. Eventually we had to hand in our bicycles. That was normal transportation in Amsterdam. We weren't allowed to use the tramways. And so we walked everywhere. And then in end of 41, we weren't allowed to go to school anymore. So my parents managed to get a lot of children that were Jewish in our school in a separate little group. We went to school in somebody's home, taught by the teachers that were also dismissed from the school. This lasted till 42. Then I turned 16 and was ready to be picked up at any time from the streets. We of course wore the badge which said Jood, Jew on it. And I was taken out of school and put to work in the office of the Liberal Jewish Congregation to give me a temporary respite from being deported. The big razzia, that's what we called it, when the Germans came from door to door. We were ready for it. On June the 20th, 1943, we all were deported to Westerbork. I was deported to Westerbork with my parents, and even though in Westerbork you had barracks that were women on one side and men on the other side, we were kept in one barrack. I was put to work in Westerbork on a farm in August, taking out potatoes on the ground when they were ready for harvesting. I also worked in the laundry.
And how long were you in this camp?
In this camp we were 7.5 months.
And what were the conditions like for you at that
Not
time?
too bad. We didn't starve. We, as a matter of fact, once a week there was cabaret going on at night. This is where I met my boyfriend, later on my husband to be. And this was Monday nights, and on Tuesday nights, Tuesdays people were deported. Every Tuesday, train with 3,000 people. I mean, people came into the camps and people went out of the camps.
And did anybody know where they were going? Did you?
They went eastwards to go to work camps.
That's what you were told.
Exactly, and that's what we believed. We had no way of knowing. We had no way of knowing. Maybe the elders knew. We children didn't know. I was 16.
When were you deported from Westerbork?
We were deported, it was either the end of January or the beginning of February 1944 to Bergen-Belsen. The story is that one of the Jewish people that ran the camp was my father's partner. He had tried to hold us back from deportation. And then there came a point when he said to my parents, "Sorry, Harry, I can't keep you any longer."
Can you describe the camp there, the conditions and things?
Well, except for standing every day to be counted. It was called standing on appel. I guess it's called standing at attention, 5 deep, like soldiers. The first couple of months actually were livable. But I remember one thing very strongly. When we came out of the train and came to Bergen-Belsen, and there were the Germans with their rifles and their German shepherds. My father took one look at it and he said, "It doesn't matter if this war lasts another couple of months or if it lasts a couple of years. I won't come out of here alive." Now, a lot of things about Bergen-Belsen is a blur because I was being lived. That's how I tried to explain it. I didn't have to make decisions for myself. My parents made decisions, and we did as we were told. My mother became a leader of a barracks. She spoke German, could talk to the Germans, make sure that everything was ship-shape and in neat and in good order. I was put to work first outside the camp in some kind of a caserne to take apart old shoes. We left Bergen-Belsen on the 6 days after this, on the 9th of April.
6 days after your father died.
The 9th of April, we were all put in a train. It was not a cattle train. There were about 2,000 of the original 5,000 people left. Lots of people had died. And we were went on a trip. We didn't know where. No food. Once in a while they handed out a slab of bread. We found out later what their plans were for us. We didn't know. Their plans were to send us eastwards to be put in a gas chamber. Let me just say, Bergen-Belsen had no gas chambers. We could not be witnesses after the war. That was the people were sent from the east to the west, others were sent from the west to the east. It's very hard to understand the mind. And after 2 weeks in this train, we were liberated by the Russians. My sister is dark brown hair, taller than I am, and looked Jewish. And she is walking in Amsterdam with me on the street in the summer of '47. I was called a whore. I was blonde, don't forget. And when the war was over, the Dutch people took revenge on the Dutch girls that had cohabitated with German soldiers and shaved their hair off. How did they know who I was? My sister, who was Jewish, was called the equivalent of what they would call here a kijk. The Dutch had learned some anti-Semitism during the war. So we ended up in Canada. We had good friends of ours had come to Canada a couple of months previous, and we applied and we were accepted. So we came to Canada and by boat via New York. We spent a week there with an uncle and an aunt. That's why I really wanted to go to the States. I had family there. And then we came to Canada and we landed here on the 23rd of October, '51, with a 16-month-old toddler.
Were you well received when you came?
By whom?
By friends and by the community?
By our friends, yes. We lived with them for a couple of weeks. No welfare, no official Canada greetings, no such thing in those days.
When you came to Canada, you said you came with one child.
We came with one child.
And your husband.
My husband, well, we came through the good offices of the Jayas.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to put, then my husband, arrived on a Friday, and on Monday my husband, nicely dressed up, went to Gias and said, where is this Mr. So-and-so that sponsored me? I'm here to go to work. And they told him what the address was, and he went to present himself, and he said, I only helped you to get out of Europe. I help displaced people. I have no work for you. So there we were, $300, that was all we were allowed to take for a family of 3 in our pockets, and no work. So my husband went back to Gias, and he said, what kind of a scam is this? And of course you can imagine our English wasn't all that hot. I mean, he had school English. I had lived in England for 3 months, so I knew a little bit more English. And he was very angry. They gave him certain addresses to go and look for work. It was 1951. There was a bad time here. And he came to a place where they said, well, okay, show us how you can weld. And I said, well, I'm not dressed for it. Well, do it anyway, in his good suit. Well, he did, and they were quite happy, and then they offered him 40 cents an hour. I said, I can't make a living. I have a wife and a child. How can I make a living with 40 cents an hour? So back to the Gias he went, and he said, look, this is the way I'm being treated here. I'm going to the Dutch consulate because this is not right. I have a Dutch passport. This is not right. They finally found him a job where he started at 65 cents an hour. And from that moment on, everything went up. It went okay.